The Las Vegas Raiders made some big moves yesterday by firing their offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy. Today we're hearing more about how the team plans to move forward after this change. Along with Getsy, they also let go of the offensive line coach, James Craig, who came from the 49ers, and their quarterbacks coach. So the Raiders are making some serious changes to their coaching staff. Antonio Pierce, the team's interim head coach, spoke about the decision, sharing his thoughts on what led to these firings. When asked why the changes were made, Pierce pointed to two major issues: turnovers and inconsistent offense. He explained that the team had been starting games strong, scoring touchdowns on the first drive, but then everything would fall apart after that. The offense had become too predictable, and that simply wasn't good enough. Pierce also made it clear that the decision to fire Getsy was entirely his own. It wasn't forced by owner Mark Davis or the general manager. Antonio Pierce took full responsibility for the move. I respect that. It shows that Pierce is ready to take control of the team and make tough decisions. Now, the Raiders haven't officially named a new offensive coordinator yet, but many believe Scott Turner, the team's current coach, will get the job. Turner makes the most sense since he's had success calling plays in the past. However, there's a challenge ahead. Scott Turner won't be starting from scratch. Getsy had already installed an offense, but that offense hasn't been working well, and it's left some players confused. So, while Turner is a good choice, he'll have to work with a system that wasn't properly set up to begin with. NFL insider Jonathan Jones tweeted that after the firings, the Raiders are considering bringing in veteran coach Norv Turner, Scott Turner's father, to help with the offense. Norv Turner has had a long, successful career as a head coach, most notably with the Chargers. If he joins the team, he could provide some much-needed experience and guidance for Scott as he tries to fix things. But here's the thing. While these changes could bring some improvement, we shouldn't expect the Raiders to suddenly turn things around and make a playoff run. There's still a lot of work to be done. The Raiders definitely have a lot of work ahead of them. While I do think the offense will improve with the changes, there are still some serious issues, especially on defense. Just yesterday, the Raiders gave up 41 points to the Cincinnati Bengals. Keep in mind, this is a Bengals team that hasn't been able to win at home all season, and they were missing key players, like their second-best wide receiver, their starting running back, and their starting left tackle. Despite that, they still managed to put up 41 points on us. That says a lot about the state of our defense. The Raiders' defense has been inconsistent this year, and that's been a major problem. It doesn't help that we still don't have a quarterback we can fully trust. Antonio Pierce was asked whether he's decided on a starting quarterback, and he admitted he hasn't made that decision yet. Based on how things have gone in the past, though, I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders go with Desmond Ridder moving forward. Last year, when Josh McDaniels was fired and Antonio Pierce took over, he made a bold move by switching to backup quarterback Aidan O'Connell. So it's not out of the question that Pierce could go with Ridder as the guy under center. That said, I'm not totally sold on Desmond Ridder. While he did have a solid drive where he led the team down the field and scored a touchdown, there were plenty of other moments where he looked shaky. Maybe it's the fact that the Raiders were missing their starting left tackle. We'll get into that in a moment, but there were a lot of plays that just didn't look good. Now, I'm not saying Gardner Minshew is a superstar quarterback, but if Antonio Pierce is serious about winning games and keeping his job, he needs to put the best quarterback on the field. Right now, that might be Minshew, assuming he's healthy. Aidan O'Connell might actually be the better option long-term, but he hasn't shown enough to be a clear starter. It's clear the Raiders have to make some tough decisions at quarterback. The Raiders also need to clean up the little things. For example, during yesterday's game, there was a fumble when Gardner Minshew tried to hand the ball off to DJ Turner, and it hit Turner right in the chest. It's moments like these that make me wonder if the team even practices those basic handoffs. A simple pitch forward to Turner, as he was in motion, could have avoided the fumble and been ruled an incomplete pass instead. These small details matter, and right now, it feels like the Raiders are missing those crucial fundamentals. Then, there's the offensive line. The Raiders need to make sure they're doing everything they can to protect the quarterback. Yesterday, we saw issues with the offensive line not chipping enough on certain plays, especially with defensive end Myles Garrett, who was a major problem for the Raiders' offensive line. Harrison Bryant should have been on the field for every snap that Garrett played, and Bryant should have been chipping or double-teaming Garrett almost every time. Instead, Garrett had a field day, causing multiple sacks, quarterback hits, and pressures, which ruined the game plan for the Raiders. It's tough to watch because Myles Garrett isn't the only one to blame here. Our right tackle, who came into this season as the supposed franchise guy, had a rough game. He gave up several sacks and pressures, and that's not something many of us expected going into the season. The offensive line just hasn't lived up to expectations, and it's costing the Raiders big time. A lot of people were high on Jermaine Eleanor, also known as M. Ford, but I needed him to prove it on the field, and yesterday, he didn't show up. Many of us, myself included, thought M. Ford was better suited for left tackle than right tackle. After he lost his job to DJ Glaze, he was moved to left tackle, and we expected him to have more success. But instead, he struggled. Part of the issue is that last year under Josh McDaniels, the Raiders used a lot of chip help and influence from the running backs and tight ends to support the tackles. But Luke Getsy, the former offensive coordinator, didn't do that. He relied more on five-man pass protection, where the tackles are left to fend for themselves. And unfortunately, M. Ford just isn't built for that kind of responsibility. To be honest, I think M. Ford could be a solid swing tackle or maybe even a guard. But as a starting tackle, especially on the left side, I just don't see it. On a brighter note, Jackson P. Johnson and Jordan Meredith both had phenomenal games. Meredith especially played really well, but Jackson P. Johnson was a standout. Johnson dominated his matchup and received an incredibly high grade, over 90, which is considered elite. Remember, this was his first full game as a starting center, and he didn't even practice at that position beforehand. For a rookie to come in and play at that level without preparation is impressive. It's exactly what you hope for when you have young talent. I think the Raiders can build around him. Now, the offensive line has had its fair share of issues, but I think a lot of these guys, like Dylan Parham, Jackson P. Johnson, and even Meredith, could benefit from a better offensive line coach. I'm not too impressed with James Craig, who was let go after the firing of Luke Getsy. Craig wasn't able to get the line where it needed to be, and even last year's coach, who went on to become the Giants' offensive line coach, didn't do a great job of developing these guys either. So, I think the new hire will be key. The guy I'm most excited about is Joe Philbin. Philbin has a solid track record in the NFL. He helped develop some of the top linemen with the Dallas Cowboys, including Terrence Steele and Tyler Smith. Steele got paid after Philbin helped him improve, and Tyler Smith is now one of the best guards in the league. Philbin was the guy who handpicked Tyler Smith, and now he's one of the best left guards in the NFL. If Philbin comes to the Raiders, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes a special interest in Jackson P. Johnson. Imagine Philbin coming in and telling the coaching staff, "Trust me, Johnson is going to be one of the best centers in the league." Honestly, after just one game, it's hard not to believe that. Anyway, I'm excited to see where the Raiders go from here. Let me know what you think. Who do you think should be the new offensive coordinator? I'll probably do a breakdown of Jackson P. Johnson's film later on, so stay tuned for that. I also think Scott Turner, with his experience calling plays in the NFL, makes sense as the Raiders' new play caller. Nothing is confirmed yet, but I'm glad the Raiders are making moves and starting to make some real decisions. I'll probably go live when the Raiders announce their choice at quarterback and offensive coordinator, so be sure to stay updated. As always, thumbs up if you like the video, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you next time with another update.